I want to talk about the administration of the CFMEU. We know that when the administrator was appointed by the Labor government, the administrator was effectively given a blank cheque. This was a blank cheque which allowed the administrator to spend members' money on whatever he wanted, without any accountability and without being required to report back to members on what their money was being spent on. Now, there are many issues with this, and this video is going to get into one of those issues. As part of this administration, the administrator has appointed an auditor. Now, this is something that happens fairly often and happens to big business, and is something that really scares big business and often would scare a political party if it happened to them. An auditor is someone who goes through all your financial records and checks that everything's above board and whatever. CFMEU leaders have always welcomed audits into their governance systems. The ACTU, when it does training sessions on corporate governance for unions, uses the CFMEU as a gold standard of governance. So this is not out of the ordinary. Appointing an auditor is not out of the ordinary. It is something that the CFMEU had in the past, will have in the future. But let's get into what's particularly interesting about this particular audit and this particular auditor. In the government's application for administration of the CFMEU, the government sought the appointment of the auditor, Kortementha. Mark Irving, the CFMEU's administrator, has since confirmed that he has asked Kortementha to audit the CFMEU. Now, when you audit a union, you can't just be any auditor. There's a bunch of legislation that applies to you specifically in your role as an auditor of a union. This is all outlined in the Fair Work Registered Organisations Act 2009. And in that act, it says that only auditors registered under the act are able to audit unions and their branches. The Fair Work Commission also very conveniently publishes a list of those approved auditors. Kortementha is not on that list. All your usuals are on there, KPMG, EY, Pitcher Partners, etc. But Kortementha is not a registered auditor for unions. They're not actually allowed to audit unions. This begs the question as to why Murray Furlong, General Manager at the Fair Work Commission and therefore supposed protector of union governance, has allowed this to happen. But it also kind of makes sense if you look into his work history. He used to be Executive Director at the Office of the Australian Building and Construction Commissioner, a government agency that was set up by the Liberal Party specifically to attack the CFMEU. Something else interesting about this particular piece of legislation is that Section 265 requires a copy of the full report or the concise report of the audit to be provided to members. However, in the government's application to appoint Kortementha as an auditor, they've specifically stated that this report will be provided to both the administrator and to the general manager. That's it, not the members. This audit is being paid for by the taxpayer, but will never be seen by the taxpayer nor the union's membership. It will only be seen by Labor Party officials. If you think this issue couldn't get any more dodgy, wait until you hear this. 3 days after the CFMEU went into administration and Kortementha was appointed as the auditor, even though they're not authorised to do so, Kortementha announced that they've launched a major projects advisory offering in the market. This is an area that they've never dabbled in before and they have no experience in. They've effectively announced that they're going to start consulting in building construction. What this means is they've been given unfettered access to the CFMEU's documents, procedures, rules and all that kind of stuff. And they're going to be using that CFMEU intelligence to provide advice to the bosses, to developers, to master builders, and to construction companies that will act against the best interests of CFMEU members. Also, somehow, it gets even worse than that. Alison Curry, Chief of Staff to the Administrator Mark Irving, very recently worked for Kortementha. This was immediately after she left PwC, another consulting firm, after a scandal that you may have heard of. This was a scandal where PwC leaked private government information to businesses so that they could avoid tax in Australia. This is all genuinely insane and borders as close to corruption as you can get. As I've said before, the issue here is not that the CFMEU is having an audit conducted. The CFMEU welcomes an audit being conducted on their financials and every other system. What it won't accept is an unaccountable and anti-transparent audit and access to all of the CFMEU's information to provide to private businesses so that they can rip off workers. And also, in the end, the Labor Party can make a few bucks off it, and actually not a few bucks, quite a lot of money, and then gain a little bit more power in the end. We know that this is an issue that can affect every union. At the moment, it's particularly affecting the CFMEU, but this could be your union too. So follow along on whichever platform you're seeing this video, and also please visit the website yourunionyourchoice.com.au because there's some stuff that you can do on there to help.